nationwide contest. That's Talk to 200-200. This is the Ross Kaminsky Show. Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
You know, if I could do that thing that Pete just told us all to do, text Talk to 200-200, I would do it. But employees are not allowed to. But you should go do it. Text Talk to 200-200. iHeart's giving away $16,000 a day. We have had winners on KHOW, so please go do that. It's around 5 after almost every hour of the day. So go check that out. All right, let's do something completely different. The last time we spoke to John Horan from Horan and McConaty, I think it was about weird stuff found after cremations or something like that. It was some kind of odd and as funny as death can be sort of topic. John Horan joins us again because I saw an article in the Washington Post and a corresponding study from a little while back from the Census Bureau that I thought was really interesting. And the headline at the Washington Post is, "The funeral as we know it is becoming a relic just in time for a death boom." And what they're talking about is because the baby boomers are such a large generation, the largest generation ever until millennials, and millennials are not near dying in large numbers, but baby boomers will be getting there. In not too many years, let's say by 2020 or so, we're going to have over 3 million deaths a year. A pretty big jump right now. We're probably under 2.5 million deaths a year. In 1980, we were under 2 million deaths a year. So it's going to be a booming business for Horan and McConaty. And with that slightly gruesome introduction, John Horan, welcome back to the show.
You know, Ross, you've really done a better job in the past introducing me. Yeah, but obviously, all that you said is true. I don't know how booming business is going to be for me in the future, but in any event, more people are expected to die because there's so many baby boomers that are, including me, they're getting to that age.
So I think one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about this morning is how are you seeing people change the way they are thinking about not just what they want done with their bodies, clearly that, but maybe other aspects of the way people are thinking about dealing with what happens after them. I mean, there are people whose job it is to plan end of life, like immediately post-death celebrations of somebody's life. And I think as the number of people who are dying increases rapidly, I do think beyond just the sort of amusing gruesomeness of it all, there really are things changing.
Oh, there are a lot of changes. I mean, baby boomers do not seem as compelled to follow the traditions of their family, what their parents did, what their grandparents did, that sort of thing. And especially, here in Colorado, I mean, look, so many of us, have moved here, and we don't go to, we can't go to a cemetery and trace our family lineage at a cemetery. And so many people don't feel compelled by tradition, and increasing numbers of people will tell you that they don't have a religious connection. That they don't have a religious or spiritual guideline to kind of take them along this path when the time comes.
So this is a very logistical kind of question here, but are we at or near a limiting factor in terms of physical space in cemeteries in the more populous areas of Colorado?
Well, Denver would be the only place where you might be able to make that argument to at least some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But I always say, well, look what they did with DIA. I mean, for those of us that have been around here long enough to remember Stapleton Airport, that was at I-70 in Quebec.
Right.
They went out to the plains. We've seen cemeteries being built farther out east. For example, in Byers, near 470 and 6th Avenue, up by Buckley Air Force Base. So as I tell folks, next time you're in a plane, look down. There's still a lot of wide open space out there. So cemetery, and beyond that, more and more people are being cremated, and I've developed two two cremation gardens, one at our Parker Road facility, another at our County Line Road facility, that can provide a beautiful place for thousands and thousands and thousands of cremated remains because they're so small and compact. It's much easier to do it that way.
So what exactly is a cremation garden? And I should probably know, but I'm Jewish, and typically my people don't do cremation.
Right. Well, a cremation garden is, in our case, an acre or two of very, very highly developed land with a stream that runs through it, a pond with koi fish. It's very peaceful, very much focused on the environment and a peaceful environment for people. And there are places such as boulders or niches in the wall, or even in the ground or in a bench where the cremated remains can be placed, and it's a lovely place to visit and reflect. And
do the cremated remains stay there, or do they dissipate over time? They blow away? How does that work?
They stay there. We do have a place where the cremated remains can be commingled, where a common place. But most people do not choose that. They want an individual space, and they stay there. That's not to say that some people don't take some of the cremated remains and take them to someplace. I don't know if you saw the article about Disney World was having a problem with that, where the people were leaving bits of cremated remains in Disney World, and I can't remember what it is, but
wow.
They have a code word over the radio that describes cleanup of cremated remains.
Oh my gosh!
In particular areas, but what we give is people a place to go, a permanent place to go, and they don't have to worry that they're going to be, treated like they are, say, at Disney World, where they're going to be swept up.
My special guest, John Horan, is president and CEO of Horan and McConaty, and their website is Horan, Horan, HoranCares.com. John, you guys have been in business since the late 19th century. What do the trends look like, not necessarily since the late 19th century, but maybe over the last generation, in terms of the balance between people desiring burial versus people desiring cremation? And let me ask you another stupid question. Are there any other alternatives that are at least even slightly common between burial and cremation?
Yeah, sure. First of all, a tremendous amount has changed just in the last 25 years. 25 years ago, I never imagined that I would own a motorcycle hearse. I didn't imagine that I would be building lovely places for receptions in all of our places. We're playing music at services today, from big band to punk rock. And everything in between. Sometimes families want us to wear Hawaiian shirts, or once in a while, when we're serving a family that identifies with their Irish heritage, Irish ties and scarves and that sort of thing. People are sharing eulogies in ways that they never used to. It used to be much more about the religious ceremony. Today, it's becoming more and more about the person that died. So, that has been a huge change. And as you said, the rate of the cremation is becoming more popular these days. So is body donation. For those that that want to donate their body to medical science, they can do that. Though sometimes these when people make this choice, let me just say, I think they should ask lots of questions so that they know what they're doing, and make sure that their survivors agree with this. We have to remember that funerals are mainly for the living. It's important for the living to get comfort, perhaps to derive meaning, and to move forward in their grief process. And a great funeral, which is increasingly being called a celebration of life, does just that.
By the way, folks, I've got the phone lines open. If you want to ask a question of John Horan, you can give us a call at 303-713-TALK, 303-713-8255. And those of you listening to the conversation, I want to ask you to think about, because I'm going to ask you to call in a bit, maybe after we talk with John, about how first of all, what you want done, not just with your body, but what you want to happen after you die. I want to know, and I also want to know whether that's changed over the years. Now, John, you addressed this a little bit already, but I want to maybe ask you to elaborate a little bit. To the extent that people are focusing more now on a funeral, whether it's part of someone being buried or cremated or anything else, being a celebration of life rather than just mourning that someone is gone. How much of that do you believe is due to a decline in societal religiosity, and how much of that do you think is just due to people not wanting to be sad or not wanting to be depressed and just wanting to look on the bright side, even while maintaining a degree of religiosity?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think clearly religiosity is declining in Colorado. I mean, Colorado is defined as one of the leading states where for people that the demographers describe as the nuns, and I'm going to spell that Nones, not to be confused with the other type. And so they don't have a spiritual guideline. And especially baby boomers do not feel compelled to follow traditions. So sometimes they come into us knowing what they want, but really not knowing what they need. And it puts my coworkers and me in a position where we want to do what people ask us to do, but if people are willing to listen to us, we can share ideas and give people ideas of things that might make an important difference to them. For example, somebody that says, well, I don't want the formality of a chapel ceremony. We can offer a reception and a podium and some music and some leadership that helps people get up and maybe share some memories and that sort of thing. So to your point, yes, there is more of a focus on the secular, on the life of the person that died, without and less of a focus on religion, generally speaking, these days. And I do think that it affects people in the sense that when someone dies, they don't know what to do. I mean, they don't have a guideline. And I mean, the baby boomers have been described as the first death-free generation in the history of humankind. Just imagine that someone could live to be maybe even 60 years old and commonly not experience the death of anyone in their inner circle, their parents, their siblings, their brothers, sisters, children, spouse. It's unprecedented in the history of humankind that people are living this long. Consequently, we don't have the experience to deal with this when the time comes. And oftentimes, I meet people who say, my parents protected me. They didn't want me to go to a funeral because they thought it was sad. And so when the time comes that they're facing death and they're thinking about, well, what do we do now that someone that we love has died? They don't know. They may know what they don't want, but not always very clear on what they do want. In previous generations, for example, my parents and grandparents would have expected their peers, to have a funeral and say, and solemn obsequies.
Yes.
Yep. And today there's much less of that sort of societal or cultural expectation, and so it's why I hire very, very creative people, because frequently we sit down with people and we start with a blank sheet of paper and we create something that has never been done before.
Yeah.
And usually it's just right.
I was just looking at a Pew Research Center poll. Now this is 3 years old, okay, and this from the beginning of 2016. How religious is your state? And I think most people won't be surprised that the far northeast of the United States, Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, those states are very, very non-religious. Connecticut as well. When you look at some of these other states, I think it backs up what you were saying about Colorado not being very religious. Back in this poll, 47% of people in Colorado said they were very religious. Now that, two things. 47% sounds like kind of a high number, but that makes us less religious in this poll than Oregon, California, Illinois, Minnesota, and I would also suspect that because of the demographic changes in Colorado, not least since the legalization of marijuana, that Colorado has dropped in religiosity probably more than any other state since in those 3 years. So I think you're definitely onto something there.
Yeah, I think that, and it's something that we see every day. It's in my business, it's a bit of a seismic shift.
Okay, so I've got only about a minute left.
Yep.
What percentage of the ceremonies you have to do now are burials, and what percentage are cremations, and what percent are anything else?
Yeah, overall, about 65% of the families that we see choose cremation.
Wow.
And the rest choose burial. I guess of those, some of those ultimately choose. We transfer maybe to another city, and they'll have burial there.
Okay,
or even occasionally cremation.
Real quick, you said 65% cremation. What was that number? What was that number 20 years ago? 35 or 40. Very interesting. John Horan is the president and CEO of Horan and McConaty. Their website is horancares.com. Thanks for being here, John.
My pleasure.
All right, we'll talk again. All right, folks, here's what I want you to do. Give me a call at 303-713-TALK right now, and we'll talk after the break. What do you want done when you die?
This report is sponsored by Staples.
Heavy and slow highways